89.1 and 99.5 FM. It is 19 hours 23 in Guyana and right across the Eastern Caribbean. Welcome to the February 22nd edition of the Glenn Lall Show. And of course, like Mr. Lall would have mentioned, joining him this evening, he has to share the spotlight tonight. And I'm pretty sure he's happy to do such. And to persons who are calling to want to know if the program is on. Thank you so much for your listenership. And we hope that you're going to share this with your family and friends, because this evening is all about engaging you, our valid listeners. You can call us on 226-745324, 622-2222, and 624-6456. You don't have credit, just call and cut off. We'll return your call. Well, I shouldn't say if you don't have credit. You don't have much credit. Call and cut off. We'll return your calls. We will stand the expense this evening. I'm happy to introduce, joining Mr. Lall this evening, two beautiful young ladies, Miss Bagot and Miss Wilberg. Ladies, gentlemen in the studio, good evening. And Mr. Lall, namaste. The floor is now yours.
I like how you introduced the two beautiful young ladies. Thank you, Joshua.
You're welcome.
Yes. Let me repeat, tonight I'm joined by two of the oil queens here at the Kaieteur News. They're the writers who every day update Guyana and the world with what we see and what we know in the oil industry. Just to let you guys know, as much as you hear me on this radio every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, both of these young ladies, yes, both of them have been an inspiration and a teacher to me in so many of their daily writings. And Joshua,
Yes.
let me tell them one more thing. You need to hear this. We fight a lot sometimes in the editorial room. And with that said, let's get the ball rolling. Namaste to all you guys. Danny?
Good evening.
Bernard?
Namaste.
Namaste.
Good evening.
And I never imagined for a moment that the leaders of a country in this 21st century can go to the length and breadth, height and depths, and try to deliberately mislead a nation. These types of things, Joshua, can only happen in dictatorial regimes like North Korea, Iran, Russia, Venezuela, and so on, where you have dictators who manage and control what people see, do, and what they hear. I never believed for a moment, Uncle and Auntie, that my country, Guyana, could have descended to that level where the leaders could buy out people who we thought were watchdogs that would fight tooth and nail for a better country, would so barefacedly betray a nation for a few dollars. But this is where we are today. This is where we are today, Joshua, in a place called Guyana. When you have supposedly educated people jumping on social media platforms, being supported by a government to distort the truth and misrepresent facts. For example, Danny,
Yes, sir.
the oil contract can be renegotiated, but they are peddling the opposite to that, even though it's written in black and white in the contract, bro. Where are we heading? Bernard? Where are we heading? Where are we going? When the world is demanding 25% royalty and more, we government have stooges defending 2% for this starving nation and proud of it. This is not defending incompetence. This is protecting corruption to its core. Uncle and Auntie, you have continued to listen to them. They are leading all of you, one by one, to the gallows, then to your graveyards. Before we hear from these two beautiful young ladies and take your calls. Let me give you guys a very important news update. Yes, it's very important. Today, Justice Nareshwar Harnanan made his ruling on the case I brought against the government over the excessive tax waivers that it granted to ExxonMobil and their affiliates. My intention was for Exxon, who giving Guyana 2% royalty and that stinking 50% profit share, to have them pay, or to have them and their subcontractors pay taxes like everyone else in this country. However, guys, late this afternoon, Justice Hardanan said that the Minister of Finance was empowered by the law through an act of Parliament to grant waivers to these oil companies. And as such, it's a sad day for Guyana. I lost that case.
Sad day for sure.
All Guyana lost. It is important for you to know, Uncle and Auntie, that the said waiver the judge talked about was done on August 9th, 2016 by the Coalition Govt after they had known that Guyana discovered massive oil. The Minister of Finance then was none other than Winston Jordan. Yes. My gosh. The judge said that I was within my right to challenge this waiver, given the oil companies in the interest of the public. But, is the but? The law empowered the Minister Jordan, to grant the waivers by a vote in Parliament, which the coalition had at that time. They had the majority.
Yep.
The judge also said, I have to pay costs, which is likely to go to Exxon lawyers. I will update all of you as we go forward on this subject matter. I just want to let you know I am strongly contemplating filing an appeal. I just have to speak to my lawyers. Guys, I put up a fight, not for me alone, but for all of you. And in life, I have come to accept that we win some and we lose some. But rest assured, Glenn Lall is a fighter.
Hell yeah.
I am not giving up. We are not protected from an oil spill. We have no ring fencing to prevent the oil companies from raping and robbing us in the billions of American dollars. No capping of the interest rates. Again, billions we are losing. No one checking or verifying these inflated bills. And now taxes, they're giving away too, man. I can't done. Fight is in my bloodstream. Bernard, do you know the coalition also grant waivers in 2019 for Tullow and the rest of the oil block people in this country?
No, he didn't.
Yes. And the PPP, like they dumb and numb to these things. The fifth, like I said, and the 6 projects, all this can change Let's wait and see what Dr. Bharat Jagdeo and Dr. Irfan Ali will do. A sad day for Guyana. Danny?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Sad day for all of us.
I thought I would have break the doctor's rule and drink at least 3 glasses of wine tonight with victory. But Guyana lost. The poor people of this country will continue to suffer because the PPP government will not change it in Parliament having the majority. You know, Bernard, there's a saying, how you make your bed, so you're going to sleep on it. These are the people. Are you staining on your fingers for? Girls, take over.
I'll give you 1 minute.
Take over.
Just give me 1 second.
Yes, go ahead. Pull the mic, take over.
1 second. I had a question, right? A very simple question. And I would ask every guy needs to ask themselves this very simple question. If this was the APNU AFC second term, do you think these people who are defending and coming with this analysis supporting a contract in ExxonMobil, do you think they will be defending this contract and supporting ExxonMobil like they're doing right now?
That's a good question, Bernard. Kiana, the floor is yours.
Well,
How are you feeling?
first of all, I'm feeling
Great.
pretty good.
Thank you.
First of all, good evening, listeners of the Glenn Lall Show. Thanks for joining us, and I'd like to preface my comments tonight by saying that the effort at Kaieteur News, the effort at Kaieteur Radio, with what we're doing with these programs, the stories that we're writing, it's all geared towards making all Guyanese aware of their rights. And that is your right to information, your right to know what is happening with your resources. And you can only know that by getting involved in the conversation.
Beautiful.
So before I say anything else, I would love to hear from the viewers, the listeners. Call in. Let us know what is it you want to know about, because that makes our job even more effective. So be part of the conversation. Don't shy away. Every voice matters. So lend your voice and, bring as many questions as possible, and we will try our best here to provide the answers. When we don't have the answers, we'll let you know. We'll consult the relevant experts. We'll bring that back to you. So,
Well said.
that said, Mr. Lall, given the comments that you made, there are a few things that I wanted to address. And you said that the case is a sad day for Guyana. I don't see it so much as a sad day.
Okay.
There's a starting point for every fight. The tax case has shown us where the loopholes are.
Hear you.
It is now up to the government to take this and make the relevant reforms so that we can ensure these types of concessions, extravagant giveaways are not perpetrated. We first have to acknowledge that what has obtained here cannot continue. So for me, I don't see this as a loss. I see it as a victory. I see it as a win because it provides a wealth of knowledge. It provides several lessons for us to take the conversation a step further. So I would invite yourself, invite all of Guyana to not be discouraged. The fight continues. It's a stepping stone to where we need to get to.
I hear you.
Also, it will
Yes.
show us whose side the government.
I hear you.
Yes.
I want to say something, but let's give Divina a chance to
Yes.
say something.
Yes, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to share with you, and be able to comment on some of these issues that are so important for us, the Guyanese people. Mr. Lall was he just gave you an update on this tax case, and my colleague just spoke a little on it as well. For me, I'm not sure if, for most Guyanese, we tend to look past, or we don't understand what the importance of these issues are unless we really dive into what it means for us. So while they were talking, I just went into a little bit of statistics that I'd like to share with you. So in 2021, Guyana waived US $1 billion in taxes to ExxonMobil, while we received only US $633 million in revenue. So just think about that. I want you to think about what this revenue, 1 billion compared to 633 million.
1 billion
What?
US?
Yes, US. What we could have done with this amount of money. Just think about it for a moment. And importantly, my colleague said, it's a stepping stone, and these tax giveaways, they just cannot continue. I agree with her completely, but at the same time, I believe that it takes a willingness. There has to be a willingness on the part of our government, on the part of every single Guyanese to say, hey, this must stop, and it will stop. So that's my encouragement to you guys. We have to have a united voice for these things to end. It cannot take one person, it cannot take just Glenn Lall on this fight. So just think about those figures and think about what that can do for you and your families, all of Guyana.
Well said. Thank you, Divina.
Okay.
Well said. Beautifully said. Kiana, you said it's a stepping stone. It's the first stepping stone in the oil sector. Divina, you talk about we received 633 million. How do you as a Guyanese feel that Guyana gave away more than what they received in taxes alone?
Almost double.
What does that tell you? And that billion, as to the 633 million we received, is now beginning or pumping with 150, 160,000 barrels per day. When they start pumping 1 million barrels per day, you have an idea the amount of billions in American dollars that this country will be losing out per year. This is why I took it upon myself and said, listen, we have to change that. I moved to the court, and I still contemplating to move to a higher court because I am not comfortable, I'm not satisfied. I gotta find a way. The lawyers have to find a way to ensure that even if we can't stop it, in the last 4 projects, 1, 2, 3, and 4, man, let us put an end to it in every other projects going forward, Kiana.
Yeah.
How much more? Like you said earlier today, we granted waivers on exploration, searching for oil. That's when the tax waivers, that's when we granted tax waivers. Now they have moved from exploration to production. You know?
Yeah.
So we have to find a way. The lawyers have to find a way to take this fight further. And like, if I'm to go with both of you, you're saying that the government needs to pull their socks up and change this. Well, the coalition did it in 2016 with their majority. Now the PPP has majority. They can move to the court and rescind that.
No,
You can change
they
that.
just pass a law. They don't have to go to court. They just pass a
I
law.
was going to ask that.
They don't have to go to
question.
court. They just pass a law in Parliament.
Can
Kiana?
we reverse the law?
Yes.
Can they? I don't
Yes,
know. I'm asking.
Parliament is a law.
No, I
Parliament
don't.
makes a law.
No, I don't think Kiana.
Actually, if I may, I think the PSA actually has, and Kiana, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's actually a provision in that contract that says any new law or regulation that's introduced, it cannot or it will not affect the profits made by Exxon. So, Kiana, maybe you can. I think you're a bit more familiar with that.
You see, thanks, Davina. And Mr. Lall, also thank you to you for raising that point. I think it is not really settled in the minds of Guyanese how toxic some of the provisions are, how poisonous some of the provisions, the tentacles that are inside of these provisions in this contract. And I say that to mean that if there's any change that this country would seek to effect on this contract directly, if you try to tamper with this contract, it is set in such a way that you have to pay. Throughout, even if we change the contract at this point in time, Guyana would have to pay because of the kind of stabilization clause. And I don't mean to use, it sounds like a big term, it's not a big term. It's just a term that's, it's a set of provisions that say the economic circumstances within which this project is produced. If you try to tamper with that, the company gets compensation. This contract was set up in such a way that if we try to get better, get more, get our fair share, we must pay the price. And not just pay the price, we must pay an arm and a leg. And in as much as we might say, okay, you know what? We can't renegotiate the contract. We have to respect sanctity of contract. How do you have sanctity of contract when a contract can tie you foot, mouth, ears, just strangle you? How can you have sanctity of contract if you're in a chokehold? So I don't, as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago has said, Dr. Kaieteur, no contract is set in stone. If we don't do it directly, there must be a way for us to find leeway, find wiggle room to improve some of the terms of this contract. So that both parties can still benefit. Guyana can get its fair share and the investor can still get the profits that they're so obsessed with.
Well said. Thank you.
I would like to come in, if I may, Mr. Lall, and just to share a point. Kiana, you spoke about the stability of the agreement and so on. But we have seen cases whereby changes were already made to that contract. For example, as it relates to royalty. So I think that the argument to say now that we must agree and we must stay to this agreement because of a stability clause, it's simply not void anymore.
It's far-fetched.
Yes.
It's far-fetched.
We cannot continue to allow government to get away with this stability of agreement argument because it's simply, for me, it's not valid anymore. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Divina, I want to add a little piece on what Kiana said just now. The question you ask her is that the contract bind Guyana. And Kiana rightly said that this contract tie we up. Okay? But I am saying, like every other commentator in the oil industry is saying that we don't want to change the contract. We're going to stick with the contract. Okay? But going forward,
going forward on every other projects, the trump card is in our hands. Correct?
Yep.
The trump cards is in our hands. Now, we are not touching the contract. We sign Lisa 1, 2, 3, and 4. We will stick with that. We have to abide with it. And we are abiding by the contract. What I'm saying, and what the Guyanese people need to understand, going forward on every other projects, the trump card is in our hands. We are in command. We are in control. Kiana, depletion policy, whatever becomes of that. Depletion policy gives us leg room to wiggle, to dance, to say, hey, hold your horses, Exxon. We gotta go slow. And Exxon does not want to go slow.
Correct.
Because they're getting it for nothing. So they are on a race track to take this oil out. Hey, depletion policy is one that we can use to say, hey man, hey, calm down, fix your flaring, fix everything,
Slow it down, cowboy.
right? You have
Slow it
that
down.
in your hands to slow it down, right? This way you can bargain with Exxon. Say no, come on, you got to talk to us. You can't have the cake and eat it all by yourself. The cake belongs to the Guyanese people, and they should be eating part of it, you know. So that's just what I wanted to add to this, how binded we are in this contract, that there is room for us to wiggle out.
Of course. And Mr. Lall, the government itself has demonstrated that it understands its power.
Well said.
And I'll give two examples
Beautiful.
of that. The contract says that when it comes to environmental coverage, its subsidiary, Esso Exploration and Production Guyana Limited, can self-insure. What that means is that the company, in simple terms, the company can use its own resources. We're trusting the company that when the time comes, in the event of an oil spill or any type of disaster, that company would go into its own resources and cover all of the bills. Self-insure, as the term suggests. Government has said, no, that's not acceptable. We don't want self-insurance.
There you go.
We want more than that.
Exactly.
So government is now in negotiations with the parent company, ExxonMobil, to say, okay, we don't want insurance from, we don't just want coverage from the sister EPGL, the sister company, the subsidiary. We want it from the parent.
Correct.
And they're negotiating. Now, the sum they're negotiating, that's a different conversation. But the point is to say that government has fearlessly gone after something that is not catered for in the contract.
Exactly.
Further to that, government has gone ahead and said, okay, you know what, we want a piece of equipment. We want it in country. It's called a capping stack.
Capping stock, correct.
Well beyond what is, considered in the contract. The government has shown that it knows how to strengthen the regulation of the sector, and it has demonstrated that it is capable of deviating from the contract. And I'll give another example of this. The local content legislation that we have. It is 1,000% an improvement over the local content provisions that are in the contract. And ExxonMobil has publicly said that Guyana doesn't need a local content legislation. And its own companies, its primary contractors, several of the companies that are in support, that are doing work with them, Guyana doesn't need that type of legislation. We don't need those type of targets. The government, once again, fearlessly went ahead and passed a legislation with 40 categories of work that says, hey, you must use Guyanese in these particular areas at these varying percentages, and they're in the process of revising that list. They're going to expand that list. And that list now will include more work for Guyanese to have greater participation in the oil and gas sector. And that is one of the biggest deviations from the contract. So once again, that just those three examples show that we can deviate from the contract, and this, the sky will not open and everybody's gonna magically be sucked up and disappear. There's still life. Their life continues.
And change is made.
Exactly.
And change is made.
Yes.
So all this big hullabaloo about sanctity of contract, and we have to abide with it. It doesn't fit anywhere. It doesn't add up. Christopher Ram bring out a beautiful story 2 days ago, in which he said that the Ali administration was able to renegotiate the gas deal, right?
Yep.
And the man is asking, well, if you can renegotiate the gas deal, why you can't renegotiate the oil deal? After all, is an oil and gas contract we sign on to.
Right. Right.
Right? So, Kiana, you talk about self-insurance has been changed. The capping stock you talk about.
Completely new development.
A new development which we added to the game.
Yes.
Right? Just in case you don't know what's a capping stock, uncle and auntie, is a fire reel. In case of a fire in case a house on fire, you have a fire reel standby there to out the fire. A capping stock is a piece of equipment in case of an oil spill. It's there to take care of the oil spill right away. So all these things were not in place, and we didn't interfere with the contract. But hey, the government requested these things, or I should say demand these things, because the Kaieteur News has been behind their tail to ensure that Guyana is protected, because at the end of the day, the region is at risk too. So you have local content changes, the capping stock changes, you get self-insurance change, you change the gas, then why can't we change the taxes? Why can't we change the royalties? Why can't we change everything in the contract? Yes, it can change, but it can only change if we hear you, the people out there, talk about change. It's only your feet on the ground and your mouth can bring about the changes you really want in this land. Divina, am I correct?
Completely agree with you. And there's actually another point that I wanted to raise, in addition to the oil spill insurance and all these other things. Government introduced something called a flaring fee. Now, for listeners who are not familiar with what that means, it means, okay, so flaring, first of all, is the burning of associated gas. So when we have oil coming up, there's also water and gas and all these other things that come up. So what Exxon was doing is flare or burning that gas offshore, and that's very dangerous for the environment. I won't get into all of that right now. So what government decided to do was introduce a fine and say, hey, Exxon, I don't want you to flare, but if you do flare, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pay me in exchange for every ton of carbon that you emit into the atmosphere. And so because of that new policy that they introduced, Guyana was able last year to actually rake in US $9 million. So here it is that they're saying, no, it's not possible for us to get more out of this contract. We simply cannot touch it. But yet here they are introducing completely new policies that we can actually get benefit from. So how can you tell us no, we can't touch it? Okay, fine. That let's introduce an addendum to say we want ring fencing, for example. Why not?
And Davina, just to add to that as well, in the auditing of the auditing provisions of the Stabroek Block PSA, the production sharing agreement, there is no provision that says the country should be given some type of financial aid or assistance from ExxonMobil to conduct audits. There's nothing in the PSA that says that. However, that did not stop the government from inserting a clause in the yellowtail permit to say that when audits are to be done by those regulators, Exxon will pay for it.
You see, as this allows
There's nothing that stopped that.
They're smart, but
Yeah.
there must be a willingness.
Yes.
They must be willing.
You know, Davina, you talk about the flaring. We're being paid peanuts. I did a program especially on that flaring, what they're doing. That is one of the trump card we have in our hands that we can use to extract more profits and royalties out of ExxonMobil. Granting these projects, they have to take care of that flaring. Now, what are they going to do with it? See? So we have so much on our side without renegotiating the contract, without touching the contract, to say, hey, Guyana needs more money. And Guyana deserve more money, and we must get more money. But this guy is not doing anything. Our leader is not doing anything.
I would like to ask you a question, and this is to both of you.
Go
Do you
ahead.
really think that changing or Guyana asking for more will actually chase these investors away, like government has been saying? Do you think that if we say, hey, instead of 2% royalty, we want give us a 10 and give us some taxes, do you think it's really going to chase those investors away or prevent other oil companies from coming into Guyana?
Davina,
No.
Davina,
Absolutely not.
Davina,
1000%.
Davina, I don't know where they come up with them kind of excuses from. I don't know which book they pull these things out of. You know? The whole world, there is no contract on earth that resembles Guyana one with a 2% royalty. None.
Out of 130.
None on earth. And guess what, Davina? We are only getting a dirty 2%. We have the best oil on earth today.
Like the sweetest.
So, and cheapest to bring up. So to tell us that you won't go away, pack up your bag and go away,
Not happening.
Madness.
man, not even a donkey with the biggest ears you could think of, you hear me, would buy into something like that. Look, didn't they say, Kiana, that if local content change, it will drive away
Yes.
investors?
Yeah.
What happened? Any one of them move? No, they abide by it. They love it.
It's a scam.
They accept it. Now, the new tiny oil blocks Jack Deere is going to auction. Guess what? That they increased the royalty to 10% with cost oil being less and everything other.
10% taxes.
Hold on. Plus taxes. How come they're not running away from that?
How come Exxon wants it?
ExxonMobil sent an application for it. You know? So if you can send an application,
Means you want it.
right, for a 10% royalty on these small oil blocks, and you're ready to pay the taxes, and you're ready to abide by all the new rules and regulations there,
Mr. President.
then how come you're going to run away when we ask you for more on the biggest oil block, the richest oil block. Which fool in this country buying into something like that, man? Is who really selling these things? But this is what these local commentators and these people with the government buy out. This is what they're preaching. This is what they're trying to push down we throat. Take the floor, Kiana, please. I see you looking. Sorry, I promise that tonight I'm not going to speak. I'm going to give you people the floor. Take it.
No. That's absolutely okay.
Go ahead.
They say great minds think alike, and I actually wrote down that same point to make with ExxonMobil actually signaling its interest to participate in the upcoming. Sorry, let me choose my words carefully. So the government is putting together a model production sharing agreement. The terms of that document, that is still being finalized. In the meantime, the heart and soul of that PSA, the fiscal take, how much government wants, is already out in the open. That has not discouraged ExxonMobil. So, if the heart and soul of this deal has not discouraged them, then it says that Exxon knows how much Guyana deserves, and the government knows how much
Exactly.
the country deserves. More importantly, I'm not sure if many of you would have caught this news story over the weekend, but Kaieteur News carried a report from Reuters. It was first said by Reuters that government is going after 20% of the Stabroek block, and they're looking to remarket it next year. Now, can you imagine for a second? 20% of the Stabroek block will be subjected to new terms, and the other part of it will not be subjected to new terms. And I think, Davina, the question that you asked about us asking for more, if that will turn away investors, I think we already have our answer. If companies are already flocking this country without the full PSA being known, everyone wants a piece of the action, whether it's shallow, whether it's deep. Everyone wants in, because this is the hottest spot in the world. Nobody's gonna walk away from the fastest growing economy in the world.
The showpiece.
Hess has deemed Guyana. Hess is the partner for ExxonMobil in the Stabroek block, and Hess has deemed Guyana the mother of all dragons, the crown jewel of its portfolio. Guyana is, they sell Guyana to their investors every single earnings call. They sell Guyana as their saving grace. They call Guyana our growth engine and our cash engine.
Only because of the contract.
So who will walk away if Guyana is simply to ask, okay, can we get a 4%, a 5%, 6% royalty? I don't believe that is an unreasonable ask. And for all the other provisions that are part of that PSA, Exxon has to be truly unconscionable to continue to deny. And the reason why I said that is because the provisions of the Stabroek Block PSA state that both parties have to agree. There has to be a mutual consent before you can tamper with anything in the contract. Exxon's most recent press conference, I recall asking its head, Alistair Routledge, if they would be willing to give Guyana just any type of increased benefit, be it royalty or not, any further increase in terms of benefits on any future contracts.
Projects.
on any future projects. Thank you. And after going around, coming around, dancing and going up and down, the final answer was no. So I genuinely do not believe that it is unconscionable or it is unreasonable for Guyanese to ask for further benefits from the Starbuck Block PSA. But what I do believe is that we would be sending the wrong message to investors to have different rules for different people in the offshore basin. I think that it needs to be a level playing field. Everyone should play by the same rules. And that, for me, I think the lopsidedness in that, there's lopsidedness in the contract, and there's going to be a lopsidedness even in how the future contracts are going to be managed. So that is my take on it. I think there needs to be a level playing field, and I think that we are already seeing that we can no longer continue this argument that investors will walk away from the fastest growing economy in the world if citizens decide to ask for a fair share.
I just wanted to add, besides what is happening locally in terms of this huge oil rush, if I can term it that way, that's happening right now. When we look at our neighbors, for example, Trinidad, every year, for the past 2 years, I've been attending their oil conference. And every year, these people always talk about, hey, we're going to renegotiate and we're going to be seeking more benefits. And so it's like their investors haven't left. They're still there. They're still pushing to develop those resources because of how it benefits them. And so, like I've been saying, there must be a willingness by our leaders to say, hey, we want more, and stamp our authority. So, yeah.
Stamp your authority. I like that one. But Kiana, let me ask this question here. Routledge says, carry your wrong and dance your wrong when you ask if there will be any more benefits to the Guyanese people on any other new projects. And he's bluntly said no. Now, if he can say no, why can't we who own these oil, say, Routledge, you telling me no more benefits? Well, no more projects for you.
Yep.
What answer do you give? What answer you think he would give to us there? Why would and the twist to that question, Kiana, is that when a man can be so blunt and tell you no, he's not giving you anything more. You know, you gotta think deeper than just that. You know?
The man is arrogant.
No, it's not arrogant. He know why, he know who he's talking to. He know where his backing is coming from. You understand? He know when he said no, hey, he's in command. He's in control. It means that he tied down the foot and the hand and the mouth and the ears and the nose of the leaders. Because I cannot see or fathom for a moment that this is my thing, okay, our thing, my children's thing, and a contractor telling me children, no, you have nothing more to give. Then why am I allowing that individual in my place?
And he's in your yard.
Yeah, why am I allowing him
I'll throw them
in
out.
my place?
I'll throw them
Why
out.
am I, all right, we agree, we give the man 4 mango tree to pick from. Why am I going to allow him to pick any mango from any other tree, Divina? Can you help me on that? Help me to understand these lemon stuff. Kiana, help me. Help me to understand. You're afraid to speak. Speak your mind.
No, you
I
just
know.
threw me a very
This is why in the editorial room we'll be fighting, because you guys just hold back. You gotta say it. You must say it, man. Say it. You father approving more and more projects, and you got the stranger telling you you're not gonna more benefits to get. You must say it. Something is wrong between your daddy and the man. Not true.
absolutely.
But this is what I want you to say.
You know, no, so Mr. Lau, you know that, right?
know.
We
playing
have
games.
our
No, the
we have our
environment that she's
different
in, she has to
we
be
have our
careful.
different ways
Yes, I know.
of expression.
I know.
And what you're saying there, it reminded me of a point that I wanted to make earlier, a concern of mine. It has to do with the pace of development. You asked me earlier about the depletion policy. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, the depletion policy is just a fancy term that speaks to how fast or how slow you pump the oil. If you want to bring it up fast, if you want to bring it up slow,
Correct.
how fast or slow you want to deplete the resources, to take it out, to extract it. So Guyana has been in partnership with two organizations, the Inter-American Development Bank and the World Bank. These two organizations, they've provided several loans to us. One is a $20 million US loan from the World Bank, and another is about 11 million. Don't quote me on that, but two substantial loans from the IDB World Bank. And the efforts from those two agencies in the beginning was to say, hey, look, Guyana, you have significant oil and gas resources, but you don't have the regulatory capacity, you don't have the institutional capacity. You need to work on building up these two arms so that you are in a better position to monitor your resources. First of all, the IDB, World Bank both said Guyana is in desperate need of experts. We need people who have the experience in this industry to show us, to help us navigate this minefield, because oil and gas is a minefield. You can be at the top of the food chain today and you can be flat on your face the next day if you don't make the right decisions. So the IDB World Bank said, listen, work on these two things. Here is some money, build your capacity. And at the same time, work on a depletion policy. And the direction of the depletion policy at the time was for us to just slow down the pace at which we were granting permission to ExxonMobil to explore, because the more they explore, the faster they will want to bring up that oil for their shareholders, because their only concern is their pocket. Secondly, the IMF in particular, not the IMF, sorry, the IDB in particular had said with this depletion policy, Guyana could go in the direction, or it would be in its interest to go in the direction of moving slowly so that you can develop the capacity to review and audit. And those are two very big areas that countries are not supposed to take for granted, because you can lose a lot of money. That's when you've passed the auditing stage, or you've neglected the review process, the review of field development plans. There is so much value that is lost if you don't get it right, and those things take time. It takes a lot of work with the right people who serve the interests of the state. So with that said, I believe that the pace at which we are going, there are over 33 discoveries in the Stabroek block. ExxonMobil is going after a 12-well program in the Stabroek block as well. And it's clear that they have been able to identify where some of the sweet spots are in the block, so that they can keep announcing another discovery, another discovery, another discovery. But what does that mean for a country that is not where it needs to be from the regulatory perspective, from the legislative perspective? And I don't know if any of you are aware, but none of our petroleum laws have been modernized. None.
Oh my.
We're still operating this sector with laws that date back to 50 years ago or 30 years ago. That is how, and that is a huge weakness, a huge loophole, because your regulation of the sector is only as strong as your legislation allows you to be. So for me, a huge concern is how fast the industry is going, and the fact that we're still trying to play catch up from the regulatory and the legislative perspective. And it's a very scary situation, because the sector is not waiting on you to catch up. By the time, and when I say that, to put that into some numbers, what I mean is the Liza 1 and the Liza 2 costs, Guyana has been, as Guyanese would say, we've been bubbling. We've been skylarking.
I like that term.
Skylark. Yeah.
Right? That's what's been happening with us. And because of the provisions in the Stabroek Block PSA, which say that we have a 2-year deadline within which to audit, if you miss that window, the costs have to be accepted as is. So what is happening now? Guyana is now auditing, years later, we are now auditing Liza 1 costs and Liza 2 costs, both combined to approximately 10 billion US, and those costs have to be accepted as is, because we don't have the capacity to edit, not to edit, but to audit in real time. We don't have the capacity to do that, to do annual audits. We're far behind. We are now at the Liza 1 and Liza 2 costs. Payara has already gone through the stables. The Yellowtail is already going through. And we're still at the starting line. So I'm sorry to spend so long on the issue.
Slow down.
But it's just to give you a synopsis of the kind of situation that we're in. And if we don't make the right decisions, this could really go badly for us.
Kiana, what you have said there, I only hope Uncle and Auntie, you people pick up what this young lady is saying. What she said there, I can do 25 programs on every line she talked about. She talked about the laws that are outdated 50 years, the ILE laws. The first thing we should be looking at as an oil producing country is the laws we have to protect Guyana in every way possible. I think our government must have changed the $20 if you catch a cow for Kerma pound. Yeah, that law must be changed. And the ganja law and all them not so important laws, they're hosting to pass those laws, change those laws rather than changing these oil good thing. You talk about relinquishment of the Stabroek Block 20%. Oh my God, I don't even want to touch that subject matter. I want to do a complete program on that for the Guyanese people to understand what you said there. And let me see if I can break that down a little more simple for them to understand what you said there, Kiana. Next year, 2024, ExxonMobil has to give up 20% of that big Stabroek Block they get for free.
26,000 acres.
You hear what I'm saying there, Uncle? We gotta give up. Them have to give up.
This year,
Now,
actually.
This year? Yeah. Guess what, Uncle? Is what part they're gonna give you?
The part that's doing oil.
Is what part they gonna give her you. And here the rule that prevents them from giving up what they want if they find oil.
Minister.
No, I shouldn't say it this way. I should say only the unexplored, the part they didn't look for oil yet, that is the part they are going to give up. Or they have to give up. If they find oil, then they don't have to give up. You hear what I'm saying there? And guess what? Jagdeo and the opposition know that ExxonMobil have to give up 20% of the oil block. Man, what would you do? Not stop them from exploring? Ebona?
Wonderful.
Stop them from exploring. Instead, we government allowing the people to explore more and more. So when the time come, is what you think they're going to give you? They're going to give back Guyana what got little or nothing inside.
Nothing at all.
Right? I wanted to do a program and explain this relinquishment
Yes.
of these oil blocks, you know, in layman terms so that people understand. Look, we're not doing anything. Like we talked about New Mexico. New Mexico, a state in the US, just asked 25%. They're getting 20% royalty. They're demanding now 25%.
We get into
And we get in 2%. The whole world, Canada, America, Europe, every other nation raised their royalty rates. Canada moved it to 40%, as high as 40%. And we did 2%. Come on, man. The whole world asks for windfall tax. 25, 30, 35%. We're not even asking for, we're not even getting an income tax.
Because zero taxes.
So you guys see where Guyana sits at this present moment with this oil company? We're in a bad shape. And the leaders you have is not saying anything or doing anything for you. What happened to the phone calls? We are sitting here waiting for your phone calls. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your comments.
I have a question.
Yes, you can come and take the mic now. I heard you guys talking about contracts.
If there's a president that's set in a contract, and you started to not abide by that contract is no longer a contract. So I want you guys to let me know, because you're talking about they're changing this and they're changing that and they're doing this and they're doing that in the contract. And I said to myself, because I was a contractor and I won a lawsuit with a contract where the state of New York deviate from the contract. I took it to court. The lower court reject me. I took it to an appeal court. 5 judges agree with me, and they award me money because the contract was so heavy-handed on one side, and the state deviate from the contract. So if I can beat the state of New York, we can beat Exxon.
Well,
Absolutely.
Well, it's a good point, but this is our contract that we signed with ExxonMobil. They're saying it's a binded contract, and we're not saying we agree. Let's agree that we're not going to change the contract, okay? Because if you attempt to change the contract, although it has room to renegotiate, right? We don't want to change the contract. We are moving away from that now. We are asking to make the changes in each ongoing projects so that we do not interfere with the contracts. That's all we are saying. We're not saying anything else.
Yeah, but if you establish a relationship and you put the contract aside, and then we started to deviate from it, the contract is no longer a contract.
Exactly. And this is what Kiana just said earlier.
Yeah.
Changes already have been made.
But that's what I'm saying, yes.
And not only Kiana said it, everybody said it. Christopher Ram said they changed the gas contract. Right?
So
the gas dealings would change. So changes are there.
So my follow-up question.
One
is,
second.
Mr. Lall,
One second. Hello?
Yes, you're live. Let's hear you.
Yeah. Oh, my house is sponsored. Because I'm wrong. Where did they run? Nationalize. Then the world, we are now, we different from everybody else. You know, we are republic. Bonham, what do they, we know what it is for. Bonham, take away the short there. This is, things from here to be short. Jack's over here. He's supposed to be really short. Jack, soup, I'm sorry, them people. We got nationalize them.
I hear you. I hear you. Thank you. Love you too. No, the gentleman is saying we have to nationalize them. No, sir, we can't do that. We can't do that. Not in this 21st century. Not in this 21st century. So don't go down that road. You sign a contract, and the contract has room to renegotiate. So let's renegotiate it. All right? Let's push in that direction. Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Namaste to you and your panel.
Namaste.
Yes, Brother Glenn. It's, you know, I like your program. It's very, very good. And I think, you know, people don't want to listen to it. Program. People say you chew people out.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
But I don't understand the president and vice president. The president said they got the sure, they will know it and approve their time, the amount. And they know they can't come up with a proper answer when they got the sure.
He said, no, he said he will. Divina, take that now.
Yeah. So based on recent figures in the energy conference, we can perhaps put a sort of value to the project, because it's now around US 2.1 billion, because it's one, Brassington is saying that it's 1 billion for the pipeline, and then it's about a billion, 1.1 billion we're going to pay back for the other two facilities, which is the power plant and the So, but I think what he is what the caller is trying to say is that the president has not come forward to tell us the value of this project.
No, he said the president said he's going to release the contract in the appropriate time.
Yes.
In his own time, the president said.
Right.
So this is what the gentleman is asking.
Right. So what we have seen throughout since the inception of this project, it's been shrouded in secrecy, and we've been exposing this at Kaieteur News, that we don't know anything. We don't know the statistics or anything. All we've been seeing is that as an engineer said, all we've been seeing is numbers being pulled from the air. So what we need is a feasibility study, and the opposition has been trying to get those agreements tabled in Parliament, but even that hasn't been forthcoming. And so here we are at the point where Guyana was just suspended from the EITI, and my colleague Ms. Wilbur can probably speak to him a bit more on that.
Thank you, sir.
And so I just want to add one more thing. The vice president, right? He said he will build 11 hospitals in this country, and at the cost, I think 600 million each, something like that.
No, I can't remember the figure, but they are building. They said they are building state-of-the-art hospitals. I don't know where they're gonna get the technicians to deal with these technical and sophisticated equipment that they are going to put into these technological improved hospitals in Guyana. I don't know where they're gonna find the nurses. I don't know where they're gonna find the doctors to work in these places.
Why I'm telling you, Saudi Hospital have about 50 nurses that they would migrate to England, and when we can do them things, where we will get all these nurses and doctor work.
That's a good question. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, my brother, you take care of it. Good night, Mr. Man.
Yes, good night.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
The kind of thing that I'm hearing, these men won't work for we, Mr. Glenn. We have to go out in the streets and demand what we need. I'm telling you, because, you know, when you do the kind of things that you're hearing, it is just got you feeling sick. Like these men are, like, you know, like them, they already just looking out for themselves and their pocket. Them a business for this nation with nothing at all, nothing. Because the kind of things that I hearing, it can make sense. We sit down and wait for nobody come and do nothing for we. We have to go there and demand what we need.
So me and you alone. So you want me and you alone to go stand up on the road every day?
But this is saying nobody
Try
want
that.
to come out. Everybody just sit down waiting. I don't know if they're waiting for a white guard to come for help them. Thank you, sir.
I understand. Kiana, the gentleman, the Vinny talk about the EITI. You want to tell them about the EITI?
Yes, so
it's very important.
for those of you who, you know, you're now hearing about, you know, this EITI thing, it's simply the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. It's an international body where countries volunteer to obey certain requirements on reporting how much money they receive from the extractive industries, and that's like forestry, the oil and gas sector, gold, diamond, bauxite, you know, the full spectrum. So the government says they receive X from those industries, and then the companies as well would submit their reporting, their reports on it to say, this is how much we gave government, and an independent person is hired to cross-check the two and to say, well, yes, government, this revenues, both sides said they submitted, it matches, or it does not. So Guyana was required to put together a report on how much money it received from the different industries, and we were late on that, and this report is supposed to cover the period January to December 2020. The president, as a result of not meeting the deadline to submit that report, which is December 2022, EITI put up on its website that Guyana is suspended for not submitting that report. Now, the government, specifically the head of state, President Irfan Ali, released a statement today explaining that the government, while it did its part to hire an independent administrator to prepare the document, the terms of reference that will guide how the administrators to carry out the preparation of the report, that was still being held up or delayed by the multi-stakeholder group. Now, the multi-stakeholder group is a body that consists of government officials, companies, representatives from companies within the industry, the gold, diamond, bauxite, and oil and gas industry, as well as civil society representatives. And those, the individuals there was some disagreement about the terms of reference. At this point in time, it's not clear what that disagreement is, and at this point in time as well, I am not aware of who raised raised concerns or what's not about the TORs, but Guyana did miss this deadline for 2020. We're in 2023, and it is an embarrassment. It's a stain on our record that we have not been able to fulfill our EITI requirements. But that's not the only requirement that we haven't fulfilled. So the report is one thing, but what I wish for listeners to understand is that EITI has several standards on transparency and accountability for the respective industries. And one of the requirements that they ask is that countries provide the public or arm the public with all of the agreements of sale for oil. To date, those contracts have not been made public.
Transparency. Transparency.
That's one requirement that we've not met. The second requirement is that we are supposed to make public the list of beneficial owners within the respective industries. This is cutting across gold, bauxite, diamond, all the mining, all of the extractive industries. We've not made that public, but government has said it will prioritize that for 2023. The next
mining
requirement that we have not been able to fulfill as yet is the release of all contracts regarding the sectors. Now we have a bunch of companies in forestry, we have a bunch of companies in mining and gold and bauxite, but we don't know what we've tied ourselves to. We don't know what we've given out. And it's important for these contracts to be released so that, you know, we can do our job to inform you of what's in there, how much we gave away, and we can assess now, based on what we gave out, are we getting value for money? Are we getting value for the concessions? Are we getting value from that contract? How do we gauge that? And we need those contracts to be made public so that we can have a proper yardstick. We can develop a proper yardstick to say whether we're getting what we deserve for our resources. So the EITI is a very important international body to be a part of. There are several requirements. There are even lots of requirements. And just as another example, there's a standard for EITI which says that you must say how oil monies are spent. Now, the issue with that and what other international actors have said is that while we do know how much oil money we collect, yes, we do, all of that is public knowledge. If we collect $6 and it's in the NRF, we know what happens to it. But where the transparency gets a bit blurred is when that money is transferred from the oil account to the consolidated fund, and then it goes into the national budget, and we have no idea of tracking how efficiently the oil money has been used, what it has been used for. So we don't know, for example, I'll give you an example from the budget. Government has set aside another $5 billion for to assist with the easing the cost of living, the burden, the high cost of living. We don't know if a portion of the oil money is going to that or not. And as a result of that, let's say hypothetically speaking, there's mismanagement with that. If we would know, for example, if a portion of the oil money is going towards that initiative and it's mismanaged, we can clearly say or hold government accountable and say, hey, this oil money, our oil money has been abused, it's been mismanaged, this is not what should be obtained. But at this point in time, you don't know. And that is also against the EITI standard, because the standard says that citizens should know how they should be able to track where the money is going so that they can know the extent to which the money, the revenues are transforming their lives. With that, I'll pause. I think I've said too much.
I have someone on the phone. Yes, good evening. You are live on the air, sir.
Good night, Mr. Lal.
Yes, good night.
To you and your panel.
Thank you.
Good evening.
The program tonight is very informative.
Mhm.
Well, I have a question for you, sir.
Yes.
What's your worst fear about this present oil sector?
Oh,
I would like you to answer that for me, sir.
thank you.
And
Oh.
secondly, the Guyanese people have the power to tell the government and the opposition to slow down. We need to apply some sort of brakes with this oil business. We are heading for chaos the way it's pushing right now. We're heading for chaos.
Thank you. Yes, I
The
believe.
Guyanese people wake up and just tell them to slow down. Slow down.
I hear you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh.
Which is my biggest fear?
With the oil industry.
Oh. I'm going to touch that one. Hold for me, please. I want to go back to you, Kiana. EITI, uncle, is an international body. I would call them a real watchdog, a real police, an international group that police countries, their income from their resources, from the gold, diamond, bauxite, timber, and now oil. Government sign on to them. The government is supposed to give them all the information required or needed so that they can see what coming in, and they also want to know how the money is spending. You know, I have been pounding these oil contracts, you know, that they have been hiding. The EITI is now calling on them to release it. They have been talking about other than the contracts, they're calling on the
Expenses.
the information. They're calling on all the information. Oh, they're calling on the beneficiaries. Oh gosh, the beneficial owners, Uncle and Auntie. Yes, the people who really collected or get the money from the sale of our oil fields, our gold fields, and our lumber fields. That is what EITI is asking for. This is why the Jagdeo and the Ali administration just got suspended, because they cannot, what? They don't have that information to give to the people. Yeah, they have it. They know it. If they don't know it, Glenn Lall know it. Glenn Lall know it. But you see, these are the things I've been talking on the radio all along. The mining contracts and the deals what we get in. The people wants to know what deal Omai and Zinjin and every Bosai, Rusal, and everybody, they want to know what deal the people of this country is getting. I so love them country, this organization. And you hear how quick. Only last night they put out a statement said that Guyana is what? Guyana is what? Suspended?
Yeah.
Well, you see how quick President Ali reacted to them? This is where you can go home, you can sleep tonight with a little peace. We are getting somewhere. And it's not only Glenn Lall alone getting under their skin and make them uncomfortable so that they can call me madman. I want to call the international organization like EITI and so many other countries, IDB, IMF, Commonwealth and so on. Call them mad men, mad women, or mad organizations. You know, we're getting somewhere, Divina. We're getting somewhere. One more point I want to touch, and this is why sometimes me and the editorial staff does be fighting. That same girl, Kiana, and Divina will be fighting on this thing. When they take the oil money and throw it into the budget, and they say they're going to build a road. Now, you tell me, how can I not say that your oil money going to build road? Divina? Now, how do you differentiate which money is budget money and which money is oil money when everything in one pot? We carried a story recently. Who wrote the story? Which one of you wrote the story when we had that fight?
I think
In which I wanted you people to say
Yeah.
oil money is doing
was
this.
funding the FDP. I think that was the story that they had allocated some money for the review of the field development plan.
Whiptail, the 6th project.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you for reminding me. Uncle, the Guyana government took some money from the budget to do an audit for this which project? For the
The
sixth
sixth project.
For the 6th project.
So I said, put in the headline, Guyana oil money is being used to audit more projects. And I said, no, Mr. Lall, you can't say it's the oil money. I said, how come I can't say it's the oil money when they're taking out, for this year, 900 million and throw it into the budget cup? Now, how do you define, how do you differentiate, how do you separate the budget money from the oil money to do audits? Right? And that was a big fight in the office. But I still maintain my ground, in which I am safe to say that the little oil money you're getting is being used to audit books. Right? Now the caller asked me my biggest fear in this oil sector. I don't know where to start, and I don't know if I can ever stop with that with such a question. But let me try to put it very simply. My biggest fear is not being protected with adequate coverage in the event of a massive blowout out there. A massive blowout with one of these oil wells can really spell disaster for not only Guyana but the entire region and for generations to come. But the second biggest fear I have is not becoming a Trinidad and Tobago. You know, caller, I witnessed in the 70s and 80s how the Trinidadian people were living. They were living like no more tomorrow. They were living like kings and queens. You know, I recall I just left the road or the market selling in the streets, and I began trading in Trinidad. And I had one of my sisters who got married to a Trini, and I used to go spend the weekend by them. And the next door neighbor was a very wealthy guy. I used to go stand up at the side of the fence just for him to see me. Right? And when he see me, he would say, Guyanese. I said, yes. And I would say, can I clean up? He had about 6 vehicles under the bottom house. And he would say, yes, come and clean up the vehicles. And I would go get a bucket and the hose and wash down the cars and so on. Take me maybe 2-3 hours. But at the end, when I'm finished, man, he would take out 200 TT and give it to me. If you wake up in a good mood, you give me 300 TT. Right? Back in them days, 300 TT dollars were money, were real money. You know? Money was like sun in Trinidad and Tobago. The rum shops used to be full by 8 o'clock in the morning. Beggars, you used to take out 20 TT and hand a beggar. 20 TT was like $5 US. You hand a beggar. That's the kind of money that Trini was able to be floating around with, dancing around with. And I am very fearful that that same situation will befall Guyana in a few years to come. But when they start pumping 1 million barrels per day, Guyana will be getting a little more money, and they will be shying a little money, $200,000-300,000 to the household.
Definitely.
Right? Mm-hmm. And people who never see money never understand what money is. Man, they're going to grab onto that, and life will be the best thing on earth for them. But guess what happened to Trinidad today? You cannot even get $1, one single TT dollar from anybody in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
They have big problems right now with Mashramani. Mashramani Carnival. Carnival is kind of suck right now. There's nothing there. And Carnival was one of the biggest thing in the world. The whole world know Trinidad for Carnival. And they can't pull off Carnival this year. I was just looking at the news 2 days ago. They can't pull it off. Right? But it was the biggest thing in the world, for the world, in Trinidad and Tobago back in those days. It tells you where Trinidad is at the moment. That the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is trying his best to see what he can wheel in from every little angle he could out of the gas deal they have in Trinidad and Tobago at present. Look, they just closed down the natural gas plant, begging Guyana now to take that instead of go on the Wales project. You understand? This is where and that's my biggest fear. Where our children and grandchildren will be in a jiffy of a time. At least Trinidad took 100 years to meet there. But the way technology is today, I keep saying that this oil can deplete by tomorrow morning. Before cock crow, it's gone. The way technology is today, this afternoon I was telling the staff, you guys need to go into the gold fields and see what these big companies is doing to Guyana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Guyana is becoming another Atlantic Ocean within the country. All over Guyana. I even tell them, some places you can't drive anymore, you gotta take boat to go over to the next side. The kind of ponds, huge craters you call it?
Craters.
Or pond. These gold seekers digging up in there. That's not supposed to be. I gotta take a helicopter to go in there to see. Man, it's terrible what's going on in this country. Not only with the wealth, but our land too. It's sad and it's sickening and it's very frightening, brothers and sisters. Kiana, Divina, you're gonna do the closing. Go ahead. Add with what I told you guys today in the meeting. They complain about the mudslide and the flooding in Linden the other day. Remember, that had so many of our brothers and sisters in discomfort. You know what was the cause of that? Nobody never knew. It's the creators with the bauxite companies. That flood, that mudslide, stem from what the bauxite companies doing in that region there.
Erosion.
But Vice President said Glenn Lall chase where the people we used to employ 900 workers. This is the kind of mentality you have for leaders running this land. People must come and fetch where your gold or your diamond, and you must pay the people. You must, yes, our people, the only thing they entitled to is a day pay of peanuts. Can you guys imagine this thing, bro?
$40.
Huh? Yes, Kiana.
Just before, we have a caller been waiting for Kaieteur.
All right.
Take it, please. Caller, good evening. Thank you for waiting.
Hi, good evening, sir. And good evening to Mr. Glenn and his panel. And I'm so happy to see Kiana and Davina there. Let me first ask though, is Kiana still having that program that she would normally have on Thursday night?
Yes, I do.
Guyana's
okay,
Orlando.
because I haven't been seeing it. Yeah, I haven't been seeing it, and I wanted to know why I'm not getting the notification. Anyway, let me just say something else too. I like to give kudos to Davina. I think she was the reporter that was at President Ali's press conference that day when she stood her ground and she made sure she asked the questions that she was given to him. And I kudos to you, Miss, and keep it up.
Thank you.
I admire that. Now let me get into this question here I want to ask. EITI, Kiana just elaborated on it about Guyana is not showing up how much money is being spent when the oil is coming in into the consolidated fund. Now, isn't that thing tied up with 2021? Is it 29th of December when everybody was having their sport and they're busy passing law in the parliament? Isn't that EITI? This thing is reflecting to that law that they were passing on that let me say that auspicious day when that thing was happening in the parliament there. And so that's why we cannot know, because if I understand correctly, the law was about how much you have to report, how much money going in, but it's not how much money coming out. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, another thing is that EITI, they were talking about Guyana not being transparent on many grounds, on many fronts. But what about locally here? When the last you hear about the Integrity Commission? I haven't been hearing a lot about the Integrity Commission lately. And as Guyanese, I think we need to know what is happening with the Integrity Commission too, right? And I think another thing that Kiana had touched on were the petroleum laws, the outdated petroleum laws. Now, that thing to me is a deliberate act on the part of governments. That was the previous one and this current one. Because if they had really was interested in updating the laws, those things would have been amended a long time ago, since they had knowledge that the oil industry was coming to Guyana. So how could they place a blind eye on these important matters, and they were looking at trivial things about updating this law and that law? I mean, everything is important, but I consider the petroleum laws that was something to be updated very, very urgently, right? And that ties in also to the whole big question of constitutional reform. They have been only talking about it, and there is I haven't been seeing anything being done about constitutional reform. All they're talking about what they want to see in the constitutional reform. I don't think that is how it should be. There should be a public, wide consultation, going to every villages, not like what Exxon going into specific areas around the country talking to a few people. They should come to every house, village, bottom house, ball field, you name it. And there is where we need to have real constitutional talks. What we want and what we don't want, right? And that is what I'll hold this government to, because they have promised about it and they have never delivered on it. And another thing, Mr. Lall, I think it was last week or the same very week here, you made a very good point when you made an analogy with when that guy won the lotto. Remember the big lotto? Mm-hmm. And how a rich man spend the money for him until he was indebted to the man again. Now I am thinking that Exxon, you see, these people are very powerful people, and when I say powerful, they are smart people. They have psychologists who are studying the Guyanese psyche, and they know that Guyanese people having to deal with an industry with this size, this gigantic size of industry, and they hear about the billions of dollars. It is something that they cannot resonate well with. So that is why I am thinking they are calling the shots to see how much money we should receive and how much money we deserve and all this kind of thing. And what is alarming, our politicians, our very venerable politicians, the bright financial gurus, sit down and accept those things. That is, to me, pointing toward treason, right?
Treason,
that is terrible, and I can't accept that, right? Now, then again, Kiana made a point about the tax that has been waived by the Minister of Finance back in 2016. I find that to be a little bit disturbing, because when the PPP was in opposition, how come at their weekly press conference nothing of that sort was ever raised? I can't recall they were saying anything about anything to that sort. Whether how it was amended, I never heard of anything like that. So to hear this thing here, I mean, I'm referring to your case in the court here. How could it be now that it was amended? I mean, and the public didn't know about it. I mean, did the Kaieteur newspaper know anything about that?
Jeez.
Or the media in general? Did anybody report on that? I find it to be a little, distressing.
Caller. If you continue, we will be here until midnight.
You know, when Josh opened the phone, he was saying, if you don't have a lot of credit, we can call you back. But this caller has a lot of credit. So he came very prepared for us.
I'm a listener to this program, and
He has been waiting to speak for quite a while.
I radio program. You have to get your pen and your notebook. I need your notes, and I know what I'm about. So, I will leave it there for now.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work, and Mr. Glenn, you and your staff do have a rest of a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Bernard, he beats you.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Kiana, I don't know how you're gonna handle it, but go ahead.
She can't
If
even
you want help,
question.
I'm gonna
The
help.
floor is yours, Kia.
Okay. So I made some notes. I'm gonna go through it, go through some of the concerns you raised very quickly. Just to set the record straight, you asked about for a clarification on the revenues, the oil money. Now the oil money goes into the oil account. There is a clear track record of how much we receive, when we receive it, and all of that information is available on the website of Bank of Guyana, which is the operational manager for the fund. What we don't know is exactly where the money is going, because that's where the question of transparency and accountability comes in. Second issue, you spoke about the legislative framework and the fact that you believe that the government is simply not doing this. And you know what? I think you're right, because I just recalled the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Anil Nanalal, Senior Counsel, boasting last year, the end of last year, about the impressive track record of the country. And he said that Guyana actually set a regional record with 25 bills in 1 year in Parliament, and none of them had to do with oil and gas. Right? None of them had to do with the oil and gas sector. And you know, if we could pass 25 bills in 1 year, the entire legislative agenda for the oil and gas sector could have been done, modernized a long time ago. This is not something that we should even be discussing in 2023 after finding oil since 2015. We shouldn't be. Now, to go to the caller's other pointers, there's so much. There's an interesting point he spoke about, the psyche of the people. And this brings me back to the point that I opened with about the importance of having Guyanese at the table, having everyone converse. Do you know what would happen? The type of governance, the type of leaders you would mold, the kind of transparency and accountability you would have in this country if every person were to make it their duty to be educated about the oil and gas sector. It would change the dynamic completely. And a lot of people like to say, oh, you know what, Kaieteur News is always with oil and gas, this, oil and gas, every day, every minute of every hour is oil and gas. Okay, if Kaieteur News stopped, then who's going to do it? Who is going to do it? Who else is doing it? Who else is making... Kaieteur News is not saying that we're going to get every single thing right. We are not experts. We are trying our best with what we have, with our talents, with our capabilities, to tell you, to help you, to enlighten you about your resources. But it's also the public's responsibility to pick up the newspaper, to read, to call in with your questions. Come with a list of it, call in, ask us and we will try our best. But at the end of the day, you have to be part of that conversation, the interest, the desire, because it's everyone's responsibility. Everyone's responsibility. What happens with this country in the next 10 years will fall on everyone's shoulder.
Perfect.
Everyone has a role to play. So I just wanted to talk, just wanted to make the point about the importance of the psyche. Yes, ExxonMobil has its people scouting and trying to understand, I wonder how much we could probably fool the Guyanese on this, or probably, get them to, not pay too much attention to certain issues. But at the end of the day, what I want Guyanese, I hope my Guyanese brothers and sisters can walk away from this discussion and understand that you don't just deserve the cupcake,
Icing.
you don't deserve the cupcake, you don't just deserve the cheese roll, the pine tart, the cake, the buns, the loaf of bread, you deserve the whole bakery. The whole bakery. So that is my closing point. There's so much. I know that the caller asked for so much. He provided so many other concerns, but time is of the essence, and we do have to leave some more time for the next conversation. So I'll close off there.
Divina.
All right. Well, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, listeners, for inviting us into your homes. We know that some of you might be even in bed right now. So we thank you for tuning in and for really listening to us, because like we've been saying, the discussion needs to change, and we need persons to become more open to these sorts of discussions. And there's no stupid question. Everybody is here to learn. We're all learning. And so we would really like you to participate more. Take notes during our little discussion. Feel free to calling at any time. Say, hey, I think you just made this point, but I don't think this is so. We would really love to hear from you. And so I, again, would like to thank you very much for listening to us. Mr. Lall, is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
Yes, the gentleman talk about, I just want to say, the gentleman talk about the white people or the foreigners are smart people. I want you to know, sir, that Bharat Jagdeo is one of the most intelligent person I know this country has. Nobody can outsmart him in nothing. He that bright. The man know his grounds. You know what is it to be a president for 12 years? Don't drink, don't smoke, He just study everything and every person. He know about a bicycle, he know about a pin, he knows about every single thing in this country and every patch of this country. You cannot outsmart him in anything. I have talked to him many times, and I know. I've talked to people who deal with him. I've talked to bankers who put him up so high. He's a very intelligent human being. So to say that white people and foreigners are smart people, no sir, you can't outsmart him. Foreigners good for corrupt governments. And with that, let me repeat, my friend. Foreigners know when they come into third world countries like this, they know how to corrupt government and government leaders and the players. I could tell you a story in Ghana, but with that, no, I'm going to leave it with that. Kiana and Divina, it was more than a pleasure. You made my night so easy tonight. I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you guys, by next week Wednesday, you're going to take the show over from me and give me a glass of wine to drink. Namaste. Let's go.
Good evening, guys.